Whoop, too far. Let's move that over there. Okay. Is it laggy or is it just you? I mean, it's probably just you. What's my internet speed? Let's see. Yeah, it's got to be you. Yeah, that's like insanely fast. I usually don't get that good, but yeah. I'm sorry to say. How are we today, Mr. Peterson? So far so good. Day's just getting started, so it could absolutely be ruined. Did I debate Andrew Wilson? Yes, I did. That I did. I'm here for the stupid. Me too, Charlie. That's literally the entire point. I wish I could figure out a way to get this on here or over there. I don't know. I guess I could. Oh, right here's fine. Thoughts on veganism? Good for them. Is Kitty Cat Peterson being a bad kitty? So far, she's being a very good kitty. She is not messing with the blinds as of right now. She is just sleeping on my lap. I'd show you, but oh, she's moving around now. Oh, look, it's Kitty Cat Peterson. Kitty Cat, the world wants to see you. Who likes those good chin scratchies, huh? Yeah, those are the best scratchies. Okay, back to whatever you were doing. Sleeping, probably. Eric, I thought of something that might be stupid, but why don't Flurfs go to Everest, get a telescope, and look at the end of the Earth? I mean, they'll say that you can only see so far. How far and what is it based on? They have absolutely, there certainly is no unifying message about that. Someone said that carrots look like eyes. That's why they're good for your eyes. They don't look like eyes at all. Even if you cut them in half with like the inside, the xylem and the phloem or whatever that is, they still don't really look like eyes. Carrots are good for your eyes because they have vitamin A, otherwise known as retinol. But actually I write about that in my new book, Facts That Aren't True. Carrots, they can improve your vision, but carrots can only get your vision to what it's supposed to be based on your particular genetics. If you already have a good diet and you're not missing anything and you have whatever vision you have, 20/20 vision, then if you were to eat 10 carrots a day, your vision would not improve. So oh, what the hell happened to my Discord went black. Now, why did that happen? No, now it's back. Any reflection on the debate? Or are you the one that asked me about Andrew Wilson? He had an absolutely miserable performance. He tried a couple of, well, he asked me the same question over and over again because he thought it was a gotcha. And I explained very clearly the flaw in it, but he couldn't abandon it. It's like he couldn't think of anything else. I wish I would have done my cross-examination differently than I did because it ended up just kind of wasting a little bit too much time. Please talk about free will. I can't. Where is the crazy? I demand the crazy. You would turn orange. Yes, if you did eat a lot of carrots, it does start to make your skin tinted orange. I'm not sure why that is. If it's like excess retinol that does that, or what does that? I don't actually know. Are you still a teacher? No. I am a prospective teacher at the moment, but right now I'm not doing it. Don't really need to, which is nice. Have I seen the video? Some guy claiming Bigfoot graped him. Oh boy. Beta carotene, not sure. Beta carotene's the precursor to retinol, isn't it? Oh no, that's just the pigment. Yeah, no, that's right. Oh no, it is it is okay, so it is the precursor to vitamin A. Yeah. And it is called carotene because of carrots. That's why it's called that. Beta carotene. Okay, so yes. My memory is partially intact. Is it better to say I don't know or make something up? I mean, it depends. You cannot know something, but if somebody's trying to have a conversation with you and they ask you, well, does your intuition tell you that you think it should be this or that? Because they may be trying to, critique whatever it is you think or believe. So, I mean, I don't know what you mean by if you don't know something. If you're completely ignorant on it, then just say, I don't know anything about that. Sorry. Flamingos turn pink. Yeah, that's because of shellfish that they eat. I don't know what's in the shellfish that does that. I don't believe in knowledge claims. What does that even mean? Luca, over on YouTube there. That's awesome. Thank you. Booger Sweet. Okay, that's interesting.
Hey, yo!
Yeah. Oh, it's just one of those screaming goats. Okay, I get it. Anything else? I heard the mouth noises of it getting ready, and I said, no. Interesting talk. Yeah. Smarter than any flat earther. Hello?
Are you okay? I don't really have much to say. I just want to say you're doing an amazing job and keep up the good work, really. That's it. Have a good day.
Thank you. Normally I don't start until like noon. I wonder if maybe that's partially why. Yesterday was pretty weak too. And Giovanni disconnected. I don't know what happened. Oh. Bring out your perms. If that's a reference to the flat earther with the Dollar Tree perm, then that's an awesome comment. Thank you, IDK313. I was told to stop acting like a flamingo. I had to put my foot down. Damn. That's rough. I'm sorry you had to go through with that. Yeah, that booger sweet guy just followed me. The screaming goat person. What are my thoughts on nuclear power? We need more nuclear power. What's the strongest evidence that flat earthers use? There's absolutely nothing. The only thing you could charitably say, and it's still just absolute dog shit, is that the earth kind of looks flat. But that's just, it's just such a terrible argument. To a bacteria, a bowling ball looks flat. Do you agree that veganism is the only way to respect animals? No. Vegans kill animals literally every day. It's, I don't know. My thing with veganism is they tend to act like it's the almost like the, what do you call it? No, not the categorical imperative. Or wait, is that what it's called? No, I don't remember. The really strict moral framework where you have to always act in interest with what you think is good or whatever. But I think it's more closer to Peter Singer's. Is that Peter Singer that wrote that paper? That weird ethics paper where it says ordinary people are monsters because they know they could, for example, donate money to charity, but they choose not to. So they're evil. And I was like, well, I mean, if you believe that if you're not vegan, you are morally bad, then I'm just like, then I have no interest, because you're an obvious hypocrite if that's what you think. If you think that veganism is more on the spectrum toward the good, and that's merely all you argue, then yeah, that's fine. I have no problem with that. For this river becomes an ocean. Peter Singer's is plural for Peterson? No. Brian Pop or Bill Nye the Science? Brain Pop or Bill Nye the Science? I have no idea what the hell Brain Pop is. Cartoon show? Literally never heard of that in my life. Sorry. What's the deal with the great apes? Why aren't they as far along as we are? Why aren't the great apes committing a genocide in Sudan and Palestine? And there's probably a few others going on that I'm not aware of. Why aren't they doing that? I'm not really sure. Maybe they're the wise ones, actually. Maybe they look around at all the things humans do and they think, well, I mean, air conditioning's pretty cool. But those things are so fucking evil. It's almost unbearable. So let's just not be like humans at all. No, but the real answer is, the real answer is actually really complicated. They're doing absolutely fine in the game of life, and evolution has no teleology, so you don't get to say what they should be doing. And you can't say that what they're doing doesn't work. And with regards to humans, culture and technology, these are evolutionary byproducts. They're not features of human evolution. Darth Dawkins owns you. That's a fucking hilarious thing to say.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
you. Can you hear me? Yeah, so I enjoy your channel a lot. I've been watching a lot of stuff on evolution. I just wanted to ask a couple questions, like as far as what your thoughts are on like theistic evolution.
What are my
I know obviously you disagree. You take the atheist perspective, but is there like, are you strongly against it? Are you like, I just like think you just disagree with it, or is there like strong evidence that you would say to disagree that God might have used evolution as a process?
I mean, there's a million angles you can approach that with. I don't think it's a defensible position, because you just sit there and you either think that God seeded Earth with life and evolution has taken its course, but humans were miraculously created. We just know that that didn't happen. Or you could say, I have heard people like, I think, Inspiring Philosophy, his sort of take on it is he thinks that there were humans, but then Adam and Eve were the first humans that God had like directly communicated with, and he points to Genesis seems to imply that there are humans out there in the world already. It's kind of later on in the narrative, but Adam and Eve go out and they, whatever. So, I mean, that's cute. I don't see how that's in any possible way defendable. Like, I don't get the hybridization of these ideas, because they can't work together. Because you either have to propose miraculous creation, which is ridiculous. Now, the second option, it's not like you could scientifically demonstrate that that's false, but it certainly isn't a scientific idea, and I don't get the whole thing of, well, I'm a rational believer, so I'm going to accept the science and then incorporate it with my beliefs, but you just have to take your beliefs based on either faith or just declaring that the book has to be true, so this is the way I make it true. I don't find that to be any more noble than the way, flood geologists interpret the layers to be biblical, which they just obviously aren't.
Yeah, well, so I agree with you on a lot of those things. I mean, I myself am a Christian, so I kind of grew up that way. But then, like, obviously, like, I'm actually in college right now for science stuff. So it's like I can't really refute anything that science says. So it's like, well, how does that really conflict? So
I would never debate evolutionary what theological what the fuck do you call it?
Theistic evolution.
I had such a brain fart there. I would never debate theistic evolution. I've seen some clips of, creationists and theistic evolutionists debating before, and those are interesting, but I would absolutely never debate it, because for me, I'm like, if you agree that evolution happens, then that's a W. I don't care. I'm not one of these anti-theist type people, although I do think the world would probably be a little bit better off without religion.
Right.
The other thing I would say about it is, have you seen that debate with between Alex O'Connor, Phil Knight, and the Nechtleys?
I believe. I mean, I know the Nechtleys did a debate with Alex O'Connor. I'm not sure about the other guy. I would maybe have to look at it.
Yeah, well, Alex, it's kind of confusing because they happened close to. I'm gonna mute you because there's a lot of wind noise, but I'll unmute you.
Oh, yeah.
Later. These two things happened really close to each other. O'Connor did a really long interview with the Nechtleys, and it really wasn't a debate, although they did go back and forth on things. But then they did, I think it was on the Modern Day Debate YouTube channel, Phil Knight, I think that's his name. If I'm getting his name wrong, I'm really sorry. But they did Alex was on his side, and then they debated the Nechtleys. And evolution was a huge part of the debate. And it's centered around the idea of the problem of evil, because Alex and Phil bring up the prospect of animal suffering and how, if you're going to adopt theistic evolution, you have to say that God chose death to be the engine that creates life on this planet, and that would, include and imply human life. So they, from a problem of evil perspective, they think that theistic evolution, I don't remember if they really said this is a problem for theistic evolution specifically. I would say it's a huge problem, though, for it. So that's a different angle you could look at it.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into like really theology and stuff, because I know that's probably not your area of expertise, but I have like it's a increasingly like common viewpoint on like that whole death scenario. So essentially, like, I don't believe that like hell per se is eternal, like punishing, like torture. And I genuinely don't think that that's like biblically backed at all. I know a lot of people do hold that view strongly, but I mean, like John 3:16 says, like, whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So like to imply that you're going to live eternally in hell is like not biblical. And there's other things like saying there's a second death and stuff like that. So I would just say that when Adam did that fall, right, it's just like that would just introduce the idea of like, oh, well, now that we can sin, now it's like, here's a punishment for what you would sin. But yeah, sorry, I'm outside, so that's why the wind. But
No problem. And somebody in YouTube corrected me. His name's Phil Halper, not Phil Knight. Phil Knight was the CEO of Nike, so I don't know what's going on in my brain, but thank you. Viewer.
I would like to. Oh yeah, I'll check that out. It was Phil Halpert.
Halper, not like The Office. Halper.
Okay. I wanted to like just kind of push back, because I'm trying to like work out what my internal thoughts are on a lot of these things. But the idea of like, I know evolution is kind of based off of like a lot of random chance and a lot of kind of it didn't know previously where it was going to go, just because it's like, like there was no way of telling from the start that we would reach to where we are currently. But
yeah, there's no teleology. So I mean,
right.
And people bring that up as a problem, but I don't see that as a problem. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Like, for example, the Mississippi River had no idea how to reach the ocean, but it did. The water just travels the path of least resistance, but it also changes literally all the time. The shape of the river does. So things can be guided toward, there isn't an actual teleos there, but there is a reason why what's happening is happening, because water will, it's not just water. Everything will go from high energy to low energy, and a river is just water doing that. So with natural selection, yeah, there's the random component, but selection is non-random.
Well, but selection is based off of the environment, wouldn't you say? So if like the environment were to change, then you would see like
what is selected for typically changes. Yeah.
So would you say that like if we were to mold our environment, then that would probably change how things evolve through natural selection?
Are you talking about human beings, or if nature changes?
Human beings, human beings, nature. I mean, like, I'm going to input God here just because, like, I'm a Christian, but, like, human beings, if we, like, I don't know, you see, like, monkeys in India, like, how they have been changing to, like, fit the city life rather than, like, nature and stuff like that. I mean, do you think that would be, like, it's not, like, out of the question to assume something like that?
Are you saying because we observe humans changing the environment and life finds ways to adapt around that's like an argument for God could be pulling the strings and making things happen?
I mean, I don't want to say like I have objective proof for anything. Like I'm just like providing like kind of some possibilities, if you might say. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's not proof, but there's no logical. It's just kind of an argument. Like if logically we can say that this happens, then there's no logical problem with saying God does something like that.
Right. I mean,
is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I would say
Okay.
like because I already have like I know a big problem with theism is like starting off with a preconceived notion and trying to get like to a conclusion through that, and I can't really like
Yeah.
refute that. I mean, yes, I already do have that presupposition, so I do try to like fit my narrative through like saying, well, evolution contradicts that or contradicts the young Earth creationists, which I disagree with.
There, I mean,
Um,
to be fair, a huge amount of that goes on in evolution. We didn't predict everything we see, in nature, but we do interpret a lot of things that we discover that are new in light of evolution, but they're always logically consistent with evolution. So you can call it you can call it uh, motivated reasoning or whatever that kind of bias is. And like in a weird sort of sense, it is, but we're not like radically reinterpreting the evidence we have. We're seeing that it is consistent with evolution. I really wish I could think of an example off the top of my head. It's kind of hard to just manifest one, but in all
I
fairness,
just
that does happen. So what you're doing, I wouldn't call it dishonest, really, or anything like that. But
Cool. I have some science questions now, just because I know you know more than about this than I do. So, as far as like, how does how do we know like, I guess the randomness behind how mutations occur? Like, I know sometimes like we see a lot of times like I've seen like textbooks say, oh, some mistakes happen here, and then like, you see a result from this. Like, I mean, what if they weren't mistakes? Or you know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to fit my like I said earlier, my narrative. But like, is that out of the question to say something like when a beneficial mutation happens, right? It's not necessarily a mistake, is what I would get at.
so you're saying the reason, like, can't I say that beneficial mutations happen because God is behind it to some degree?
Right, something like that. I mean, obviously, there's
so
a lot of
here's
things that. Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a real big problem with this. This is a highbrow example of it. I'm going to give you a lowbrow example of it because it's really easy to understand. I had this really hilarious debate with this group of complete morons a couple of weeks ago, and one of them asked me, "What would it take for you to believe in God?" And I said, "Okay, I'll try it right now. God, please give me a McChicken." Oh, look, it didn't happen. And the guy said, like, I'm not kidding. In response to this, he said, "Yeah, bro, you go to the McDonald's and you buy it yourself. That's how it works." I was like, that's proof that God exists. And his argument was, who made it so it would be possible for you to go buy the McChicken? Like, that was his argument, right? And I was just floored by how stupid that was. And the logical or philosophical problem or whatever with this is what he did was the error in this is a world where God doesn't exist is a world where I have to go to McDonald's to buy my own McChicken. A universe where God exists, according to this guy, is a world where God created the universe and just through the normal natural processes of the universe, McDonald's was created or whatever. So basically, hopefully I explained that well, but he described two opposite worlds that are indistinguishable from each other. Does that make sense?
Right. So,
So
I understood your analogy, but how does that relate to, I guess, what I was saying? Maybe
Yep.
I just didn't pick up on the connection.
Yep, yeah, and I hadn't bridged it quite yet. So your example with the mutations, and like God possibly being intervening, I think is just a highbrow example of the exact same thing. Because if God doesn't exist, then like there's no like how we can't sit here and say that evolution can't be something that happens if God doesn't exist. So these beneficial mutations, you can call it a teleology based on the mind of God, and I can concede that God would be able to do that or would desire or set things up that way. But if God doesn't exist, then that's still something we would expect to see. So it doesn't lend any, like, you can say that it's logically consistent, but it's indistinguishable from a world without God. Because that would happen anyways. I have more to add to that, but I want to see if that makes sense and then let you give a take on it.
Yeah, no, I understand. I actually was talking to someone else, and it's like, I guess what I was proposing is possible, but it's not like necessary. Is what, like, I mean, it could happen.
It's not a necessary and sufficient condition. It's just sufficient or whatever.
Would you say, kind of switching topics, staying on the same topic-ish, I know a lot of people, they like look at the Big Bang and they're like, oh, well, how is that possible? And I actually really liked your point and didn't actually think about that before, but you're like, well, science doesn't know what happened before the Big Bang, so there's like no real, like, we don't know, so that's it. We just leave it at that. But
yeah, it's also up to question whether or not saying before the Big Bang is even allowed to be asked. We don't know if there even is such a thing as before the Big Bang. So it kind of, asking the question puts the cart before the horse in a big way.
Well, do you think that the universe is eternal in the sense that, like, before the, well, I know you just said it could not be possible, but in that theory of like expansion and contraction, is that like something that is possible, or has that been refuted, or?
No, it absolutely hasn't been refuted. It's totally possible. Penrose has a model on that. To me, you could call that eternal, I guess, in the sense that it never begins and never ends. That's a kind of a weird way of describing something that's eternal, but that's fine with me.
Okay, because I was saying, like, if that model were to be true, then, like, I guess there is no real reason for, like, God to start things. But if you were to take the other view of just there was like that, what they call it, the singularity, I think, am I wrong in that the particle that was like, commenced the Big Bang?
Yeah, it's not a particle. Singularity just means all the forces we see today get unified into a singular one because all of our laws of physics break down. And so it becomes this is the theory of everything that Hawking was in search of. So that's what the singularity means. It doesn't mean it's a literal actual point or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I can't really wrap my mind around exactly. Maybe you could explain this here now, like what the Big Bang is, because I know it's like the universe is expanding, but like also the universe is primarily made of nothing, like space. So how is nothing expanding into nothing? Or maybe I don't.
Well, what you're asking is, if the universe is expanding, what is it expanding into? And we don't know what's outside the observable universe, but I mean, if the universe by like maybe it helps to try to not confuse what we can see and what we label the universe with what the universe kind of by definition is. The universe is, we could call it the set of all things, right? Because the universe is everything. So then you say, well, what is the universe expanding into? Well, there's nothing other than the universe. The universe just expands. Now, how can that be? If it's getting bigger, then that means that there's a place over there where this stuff, or like, how would you say this? You would say, if it's expanding, then what I can see off in the distance, the stuff that's right here is eventually going to be there. So now extrapolate that out to the edge of the universe, and it has to be going into something. Well, there's an edge to the observable universe, but by all accounts, if I were to teleport you immediately to the edge of the observable universe and you looked around, it would almost certainly just look like the universe. You would just see more stuff. It's kind of like a horizon problem on Earth. If you're in the ocean and you look around, all you see is the sea, but there's a limit to how far you can see. But if I teleport you to the edge of your horizon and you look around, it's not like if you look back the way you came from, you can see stuff and then once you look in the direction of where before you couldn't see, oh, there's nothing there. No, it's just more ocean, right? So for all of our ability to detect the sort of shape of the universe, I don't remember if you call it the topology or what, but the universe appears totally flat, which means it literally just goes on forever. So there's nothing other than the universe, and the material within it simply spreads out over time.
And would you say like I've seen that model where it's kind of like a cone shaped, but like is there like a point that you could like hypothetically travel to in which like things are still expanding from, or was it just like is there a center of the universe? I guess,
that model of the Big Bang where it looks like a condom with a trumpet flute at the end, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is, so what that does is linearly it's giving you time, and then I don't know what you'd call that because it's two-dimensional, but the growing diameter of that circle as you go through, that is essentially describing the observable universe. So what happens is, in the earliest moments, the observable universe, because light has a finite speed, was smaller, and it's getting bigger because light has had time to travel. But then I might actually be getting that slightly wrong, because I think I might actually be conflating that. But that is true what I said about light. But the other thing is the way that model grows, that's actually part of the expansion. And what you see is toward the end, it flares out and it's growing at a faster rate. That's because the universe is actually accelerating in its expansion because of dark energy. So that's actually probably the main reason why it flares out and whatever like that.
I know I'm going to sound like a lot of the people you talk to, but when you say things like dark energy, is that like something that we can like probably not observe, but is that something that we can like prove or like somehow mathematically like say that there's some weird force there going on, or like is that just kind of made up?
So no, we know for certain that we don't know what dark energy is or what's making it happen, but we know for certain that how do I want to say it? Whatever is causing, this is so hard to say for some reason. We know exactly what dark energy is doing. We just don't know what it is. We know that the universe is accelerating in its expansion. That is known. The cause behind it isn't known. That's why it's called dark energy.
Right. Is it wrong to, going back to like what I was bringing, my whole main shtick, is it wrong? Obviously, like, yes, we can't prove that like God is out there, but I would say neither can we really disprove it. We can disprove like young Earth creationists, but as far as like saying, well, if pre-singularity expanding, right? Like there was to be a cause behind that. Is it really wrong to, or not wrong, but I guess intellectually dishonest to say like, maybe there was a cause to this, and that cause could be what we would label as God? Or is that more a God of the gaps argument?
I mean, it's kind of a God of the gaps argument, but weirdly, so what you're doing with God is kind of like a dark energy thing. You're saying, I don't think it's quite as strong, because you're saying the God of the gaps thing, I don't know. The God of the gaps thing is kind of like this. Look, there appears to be a beginning. So God is the thing that is stands in place. It's like the placeholder for the cause of the beginning. And yeah, that's God of the gaps. I mean, but I see the natural inclination toward saying or assuming or yearning, looking for an explanation for that first cause or whatever. I to me, the bigger, oh, he dropped. I'll just finish this out. To me, the bigger problem with that is that, I forgot what I was going to say. I got distracted because my screen went black, so I thought my live stream got shut down, but it was just him disconnecting. You have to specially plead. Like, to say there's a thing that's the first thing, because everything has to have a cause, but the first thing doesn't have a cause. To me, I think the special pleading is a graver sin than the God of the gaps thing is.
Connected. My bad.
No worries. Did you hear what I said?
You were just about to explain why it wasn't God of the Gaps. I apologize. I'm outside and something weird happened.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think it is kind of God of the Gaps. I don't think God of the Gaps is like a terrible fallacy, because there's a natural yearning for humans to explain things, and what we don't understand, people just kind of say God, they imagine that they know the shape of that missing piece, and they imagine what shape God is, and they say, yes, a God-shaped piece goes there. Now, we don't know that, but I understand the natural inclination. To me, the greater logical error in this is that you have to specially plead. You have to say everything has antecedents that cause it. So I'm going to say there's one thing that doesn't, and that's God. And there's no logical reason why somebody can say the universe isn't that. So,
well, I think by nature, I mean, like, everything we see here is through like matter and time, right? But I think like the concept of God is something outside of that. So in that case, like, he wouldn't be constrained to that rule, while we are, in the sense of like we have to have, or like anything physical would have to have like a beginning in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but to me that's just totally incoherent, because if that means that God has the same characteristics that something that doesn't exist has. It's immaterial. It exists in no time. So there's no space. There's no time to it. It's not made of anything. Those are the same. That's the description of what nothing is. And I think,
right.
I mean, people only do that because there's this other weird, fallacious argument that if a universe is made of space, time, and matter, then it can only be created by something that is outside of those things. And I don't understand why people think that is the case. I mean, we can build robots that make robots. So, like, the idea that something can only come from things that it's not. Human reproduction demonstrates that's not the case. The combining of chemical elements to make new elements demonstrates that's not the case. So I would
say, like, I guess to push back on that is like the robots analogy or any other things that would be like other, you're making robots from parts, not from like absolutely nothing, right? Like you would have to make, like, the metal from those parts comes from a quarry in the earth. So it's like, we're talking about like something like existing in the physical realm versus like would have to be created by something outside.
I can just reject creation out of nothing as being logically impossible. From nothing, nothing comes.
Right. So if there was like nothing before the Big Bang, then how would? I mean, I guess, or are you saying that singularity was eternal or something?
Yeah, the universe can exist. So what I do to try to help people not really understand it, but kind of accept it, is I ask them to think about black holes. Now, we know that black holes exist, but inside of that black hole, we can't describe anything about it because all of the laws of physics we have unify. Another way to say it is they completely break down, and we don't have anything that can describe what's going on in there. As we run the clock backwards with the universe, it does something a little bit like a black hole. Everything becomes more densely compacted together, and because of that, all the forces we understand unify. So, and that would mean that time, as we understand it, breaks down too, because that's another thing for black holes. You can check out really cool information. People tell you what happens as you fall into the event horizon and how time all of time rushes before you as you fall in, but an outside observer sees it differently. And then when you're in there, what the hell's going on? So time would have absolutely been different before the Big Bang expansion. And so perhaps what you have is literally just a quantum field or whatever, or just a wave function or something. And because time is a fourth dimension of space like we experience it now, just literally wasn't a feature of the universe, it can be eternal. It can just exist. And time doesn't really pass.
I wanted to. I think I mean I can grasp it only as so much as I can grasp it. Right, it's pretty heavy stuff. But
Yeah.
I wanted to like kind of push back on something you said earlier, where you were like, well, the way that I described God as being something that's not physically there and outside of time, so that's like the same
spaceless,
definition
timeless,
of nothing.
immaterial. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, what about like you were saying stuff like dark energy, or like I don't know, if I like think of a zebra in my head, the zebra is not actually there, but it's still like something that's, you know, immaterial, or like, you know, things that aren't like the laws of physics are I mean, we can write them down, but they're not like a physical thing.
Well,
Is that like
Well, I think that the laws of physics are descriptions of nature. They're not something out there that we pluck. And logic would be that way too. I've had lots of debates about this. People insist logic exists, and I say no, I absolutely do not think it does. I think it is purely descriptive. You don't pluck the law of identity out of some magical realm, and that's what makes something have an identity. No, it has an identity, and then we describe it.
Well, I guess like what's to say that like obviously these laws describe how like the universe works, but like is it just like by coincidence, or by like just the fact that it arrived here, or that not arrived, that's a bad word, but like that it, how did those come into being from like the singularity that those rules didn't really exist, I guess?
I have no idea. There are concepts like multiverse and I don't know if many worlds isn't really a description of. I don't think you can't use many worlds to try to describe why does the universe look the way it does rather than some other way. I don't think you can do that, but multiverse you can. Multiverse is kind of misunderstood by a lot of people. Geez, that wind noise is really bad. One of the ideas of multiverse is, I don't know if there's more than one idea of it, but the only one I know is that we have this horizon problem with the observable universe. You can only see so far. The idea goes something like, well, when the universe began expanding, there were actually local pockets where you have all these different permutations or combinations of the constants of physics, and they can all work together, and they all manifested in different ways in these local regions. And then as the universe has expanded, these multi-universes all exist in the single universe, but we're separated from them by like our visible boundary, and that's bound up in the laws of physics too. So the implication for this essentially is if I teleported you to somewhere like hundreds and hundreds of billions of light years away, you could actually be in a place where the laws of physics are different. And that's not something that was retroactively invented because physicists are like, the God people are going to nuke us on this if we don't come up with an explanation. Physicists had no opinions about that possibility even. It was borne out of the equations. The equations were telling them, well, holy shit, we might have this concept. It's like with black holes. Nobody said, I bet there are black holes out there, and then they fudged the math to make them work. It was by studying Einstein's equations that later scientists were like, wait a minute, this goes to infinity at some point. So does that mean? And then they went and searched for them, and we found them. So
Yeah, unfortunately, like, I mean, I'm majoring in biomedical sciences, so like I just finished biochem, but like I have really no knowledge too much of like a lot of astrophysics and all that, so I can't really speak much on it. But yeah, I mean,
I can just define things crudely for you. I don't understand any of this
I
too
kind of
deeply.
have to go, but
That's fine.
okay. Well, thank you for the discussion, much appreciated. So I'm officially disconnect now.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thanks. Well, the wind noise sucked, but it was a nice conversation. All right, I think the chip guy has been waiting the
Hi.
longest.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, what's up?
Okay. So, well, I put that statement in the chat about veganism, and I'm interested. Would you like to have a conversation with me about veganism?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I got to reply to this message here.
Sure. I might cough in the middle of it because I'm a bit sick. Sorry.
That's no problem. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really have it's not my thing. So I
No,
mean,
yeah, but like,
fire away, but go ahead.
I mean, veganism is essentially like just rejecting animal exploitation as much as possible and practicable. Like, there's many definitions
Yeah,
that
that's
people
fine.
go by, but yeah. So wouldn't you say that then, if you as an individual are faced with the option between exploiting an animal or not, wouldn't you say it's a moral obligation for you to choose to not exploit that animal?
Not if you. I would say not if you don't value the like if you don't extend the same kinds of rights that you think that apply to you and your in group, then no, there's really no case that you can make that they ought extend that to other animals. If you're a vegan and you want to be logically and morally consistent, then yes. But if you don't share that belief, then I don't really see why.
Okay. Well, I would you say that if it were the case for humans, that you should try to reject human exploitation as much as possible and practicable, or let me put it this way, that it is a moral obligation for you to try to reject human exploitation as much as possible and practicable?
I don't know what you mean by human exploitation. I mean, is it exploitative to rely on like a farmer to be able to feed you? Like, is it exploitative to start a business and have employees that do most of the work? And like you can pay them like a really good salary, but you're like, is that exploitation? I just don't know what exploitative means here.
Fair enough. Well, I usually go by the idea, by the definition that exploitation means unfair usage. So,
Sure.
so wouldn't you say that then we have a moral obligation to be fair towards people, like towards humans?
I don't have a problem with that.
Sure. So then there's this argument within veganism that says, what is the morally significant difference between a human being and an animal that says you don't have the same obligation towards an animal?
Yeah, like what's the I can't remember how they say that. Like I
The
think
trait difference.
yeah, the trait difference between them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything for that, really. When I've tried to think about this, the only thing that I really come up with is sort of, how would you describe it? Sort of the reality of the situation. So I reject that. Like, I don't think that human rights exist. People talk about the right to exist or something like that. Nobody, no entity, no group has that. The only thing that they actually do have is the ability to sort of not defend their claim, but to enforce their claim. It's not a very, I'm not wording this very sophisticatedly, but that's the only thing that really exists. And animals don't have that unless we do all of the work for them, right?
But
So, and again, I'm not trying to make I'm not taking a moral stance on this. I'm just describing sort of what the reality of it is. Humans come together and we create social contracts and all this other stuff to assert the rights that we say we have. And any group that doesn't agree with you, and they form their own coalition, it can be that they can take it away. I'm not saying that they should or anything like that. It's just kind of the reality. And animals just completely lack that. If they could band together like we do, ants could absolutely eradicate the world of humans, and they might actually want to.
okay, but let me put it this way. Do you think that somebody who stands by human rights, who believes humans should have rights morally, not necessarily legally, would be morally inconsistent or logically inconsistent if they don't believe that the animals should share at least some of those rights, like the right to live free of exploitation?
In what sense would an animal have the right to that? I don't understand.
I think morally they should have that right because they are sentient beings. They do have the subjective experience of the world, and thus us trying to exploit them would mean that we are changing their experience of the world for our own benefit and against their own detriment.
But don't animals do that to each other? Even if they're
If
they're not meta aware
do.
of it, don't they do that?
They do, but there's a difference between moral agents and moral patients, right? Animals are moral patients. It's accustomed to what a child would do. Like a child might do something stupid, but you won't blame the child because they don't know any better. Just like that, an animal doesn't know any better, but we do, right? So we as individuals who claim to be acting morally, we should essentially be saying, well, we should be extending these basic rights to animals also.
You're just gonna make me look stupid because, like I said, this isn't what I do.
Fair enough.
And
Look,
most
like
the reason I'm good at this is or like the other stuff I do is because I've done it a million times and I've thought about it in the shower a million times before too. So, I don't know. I don't even know what to say.
But let me put it this way: like you're aware of the horrible practices within animal agriculture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like I understand you probably never have thought about this, right? I'm not here to to point fingers or anything. I'm just like curious, like because when you make these choices, you're also aware that you can make different choices, right? Like you can always choose a plant-based diet, like when it comes to diet,
but okay. So here's kind of where I don't really. Sometimes I don't get it with the vegan thing, right? So if being vegan is just about trying to do less of the exploitation and try to do less of the harm, then I'm like, then I don't even disagree. But when it's couched as being vegan is morally right and being non-vegan is morally wrong, that's where I'm like, okay, but we have a huge problem here because being vegan means animals have to die because you have to grow food at an industrial level, which means you have to destroy habitat. Literally, there are animals that live in the pores. It's this weird kind of mite. I can't remember what its name is, but there are animals that live on the pores of your skin. And every time you wash your body, you are destroying them in the most... I mean, it's like you getting run over by what are those things called with the big drum on it and it runs. What the hell? Why my brain is not braining today. A steamroller, not a steamroller, but like something like that. Or maybe it is called a steamroller. You're doing the equivalent to them. And I don't think any vegan has a problem with when a mosquito bites you, you slap it and kill it. And then you're just like, it's kind of like you're saying, well, I don't care about insects, but I care about animals. And it's like, what are we doing here? So I'm not accusing you of any of that. That's just where I'm I'm like, here's where the logic looks like it kind of breaks down for me.
Sure.
If you're
Well,
going
I
to
can
say
explain
that
to you.
veganism is
Yeah.
good and non-veganism just by definition is morally wrong, then I can't agree with you for those reasons.
So let me okay, let me say it, let me put it this way. So you mentioned bacteria on hand. I don't know which you mentioned a
No,
couple of
not
things. I tried
bacteria.
to write them down.
They're mites. There are
Um,
animals that live on your skin, but
Yeah.
just growing crops industrially means you have to destroy animal habitat, and it kills and displaces uncountable
Yeah.
numbers of animals.
Yeah. S- let me tackle it one by one. Okay, so you mentioned mites on hands. The whole thing about veganism is respecting sentient animals, and the reason for that is because they have a subjective experience of the world. They're somebody, right? Sentience essentially means you're a somebody. If you're not sentient, of course, you would try to reduce harm as much as you can, in also in those situations. But I don't think you necessarily have a moral obligation towards that. Um, so that's
So
about.
so insects don't rise to the level
They do,
of.
but not like I don't know if mites are sentient. Are mites sentient?
I don't think any animal is not sentient.
I mean, if they don't have a brain or a central nervous system, it's highly unlikely that they would be sentient, right?
I don't think sponges have a nervous system, but I think basically any other animal does.
So as far as I know, sentience is an emerging property of brains, right? So I also don't know enough about it. Um,
Oh,
but either way,
jellyfish.
right?
Or wait, do jellyfish have a nervous system? So I'm
Yeah,
looking this up.
yeah.
Um, animals without a nervous system: sponges, placozoans. That wouldn't include mites, though. So I think it's extremely limited. But like an insect has a subjective. There's a really cool book that you would probably like. It's called Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith, and it's
I'm
about.
writing it down.
It's kind of like he's a philosopher, but it's very scientific leaning, and it's about how nervous systems and subjective experiences may have evolved. And he does a lot of talk about insects because there's this idea of, can insects feel pain? Do they have a subjective experience? And there are some arguments that go kind of both ways with it, because like when you tear a limb off of an insect, they don't do any kind of grooming to the limb. They just keep walking, because grooming
Yeah.
is something that more complex animals kind of always do when they're harmed. Which I just mean like they
Um,
start licking it. They don't say like, "Hey, you want some candy?" or something like that. But
yeah.
there are other experiments that I can't remember that seem to indicate that insects understand some sort of sense of pain, or just which is really just the body's way of telling you that something is going horribly wrong, that is detrimental for your survival. But
Uh,
anyways,
Yeah, I agree with you totally, right? Like, I think most insects are sentient indeed. That's why we, like, when it comes to mosquitoes, because I did write that down. Essentially, there is a difference there because if a mosquito is biting you, they're essentially attacking you in a sense, right? So when you are smacking a mosquito, or when you're chasing a mosquito out of your house, or you're killing a mosquito because they're in your house, whatever, you're not going intentionally to go and kill a mosquito. You're essentially just protecting your house. Like, your intent is not to kill the mosquito. I mean, it isn't that,
sure,
but the purpose of it is for you to protect your house. And the same goes for crop agriculture.
sure,
Although
sure.
there's many things
Sustaining
to be said
yourself
about
is
that.
not the same as self-defense. I can concede that that's
Yeah.
a weak argument. But for 8 billion humans to exist, trillions, probably maybe even more than trillions, but trillions of animals have to die, even if we're all vegan.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, there's no vegan, I think, on this planet who says that
Yeah.
there is no harm that comes with existence itself. But that doesn't necessarily imply that you can create more harm, right? Like, you can't say, well, animals died in the creation of my house because
Well, you can.
therefore I'll go around killing more animals, right?
Is it morally wrong to not have children?
Is it more? Oh, that's an interesting. So I've been actually tackling what do you call it? When you're again, I think there is no. I don't know if it's morally wrong to not have children. I'll just say I don't know. You could make an argument for it, yes.
Well, okay. Would it be morally wrong for humans
Sorry,
to
to have children. Yeah. No.
I said to not have children.
Is it morally wrong? No, it's not morally wrong to not have children.
Okay. So then would it be morally wrong for humans to collectively decide there should only be 1 billion of us? Because that would reduce animal suffering. Even if we were all
No.
vegan.
No. So that's why, in general, like veganism isn't a utilitarian position. But rather a deontological position, and it essentially
Interesting.
means respect in each individual, essentially, right? Like it's about your intent more than anything. If you're
Yeah.
driving your car and you accidentally run over an animal, or a human, you didn't have that intent, so you don't necessarily, you are responsible for it, but you're not like morally culpable. I don't know how to put it. Like there's a difference between that and you intentionally taking your car and ramming into somebody, right?
So this is where it just gets kind of sloppy for me, because you sort of went to the thing about like if I choose to buy meat from the supermarket, I know that I'm contributing to animal suffering.
Yeah.
Well, if we choose for there to be more humans, not less humans, then we know, even if we're all vegan, we know that we're choosing more animal death and suffering. And so I'm not trying to win this debate. I'm not trying to do gotchas. I'm just searching for what is like logically consistent and on both ends. And so let me just get your position on this, because I already stated it earlier, but I just want to know, do you think that being vegan is morally right and not being vegan is morally wrong? Or do you think like veganism is over here and being like 100% carnivore is over here? And the closer you are to veganism, you are just increasing the good.
So as far as the definition goes, right, being veganism is you try to abstain from animal exploitation. You try to reject animal exploitation as much as it's possible and practicable. And
like let me.
knowing that
I'm sorry, but I'll interrupt just because I think it'll help. Is it
sure.
moral? Is it still morally wrong to eat meat, but do your best to do it in a way that's less exploitative?
So, first of all, I don't think there is a way that it is not exploitative to eat meat. Maybe if you eat dead animals that have died of natural causes or accidentally, right? Maybe that would be a way where it's not exploitative to eat meat. But if you are paying for an animal to be brought into existence only to be slaughtered, then it is inherently exploitative. And
what about hunting?
Whole point hunting is, well, hunting is it's difficult to call it exploitative, right? Because you're essentially just going out in nature and killing somebody. But hunting would still be wrong, knowing the context that you are causing harm to an innocent animal when you don't need to, right? Because that's where it boils down to.
So
to two factors: whether you need to and whether you know what you're doing, right? Because if you're a person who just goes about your day and you have never thought about it, I don't think you're necessarily acting immorally. But if you know what you're doing, if you know the harm that you're causing, the exploitation that you're supporting, and you still choose to be part of it, then yes, I think you're acting immorally, regardless of how animal products you are consuming. Even once a month, you would still be acting immorally.
Yeah, so that's the part of it for me that I think everybody's a hypocrite. I think I'm a hypocrite. And I think the vegan, when they adopt this position, is a hypocrite too. Because like for me, there's that meme. Well, it's not really a meme. It's real. But that billboard that some vegans put up where it has all these animals and it says, "Where do you draw the line between food and pet?"
Yeah.
And like they did it really badly because they put the cow and the bunny next to each other, and it's like, yeah, that's where you draw the line. And for me, I'm like, yeah. But like, do I think it would be morally wrong to eat a horse? Well, I wouldn't do it, but people do it. I wouldn't do it. Do I think it would be morally wrong? Like in Africa, they eat a lot of bushmeat, and some of that is chimpanzees. Now, I would absolutely never do it, but people live there. It's a very poor part of the world. They do it, and it's not morally wrong. But let's imagine a crazy world where our closest relatives didn't go extinct. So like Neanderthals exist, Homo erectus still exists. I would absolutely say, no, it is not okay to kill Homo erectus and eat it. And I am drawing the line in a completely arbitrary place based on emotion. I completely admit it. When the vegan position is that when you eat meat, you're causing animal harm, and so therefore there isn't a way to not be vegan and to be morally correct, but to be vegan but being vegan always necessarily results in animal harm unless you're going to completely obliterate human civilization, which would kill billions of us. And then there is no, because growing soybeans for tofu is industrial agriculture as well, that necessarily kills trillions upon trillions of animals. And it's kind of, I think the only thing you can do is arbitrarily draw the line at insects and moles and burrowing owls and whatever else don't have the moral value that I require to justify feeding 8 billion humans. And if it's just a harm reduction principle and you can say, yeah, the guy that lives on his own land and hunts, but otherwise doesn't really buy farmed meat, I'm okay with that. But that's never the position. And so I just think everybody's a hypocrite, you know?
But isn't this kind of a nirvana fallacy? Because you're saying we can't be perfect, therefore we should not try to make things better. Because and it's not necessarily about.
But I can agree that there's a gradient of I am not taking a dichotomous position of these are the things that we know are wrong, these are the things we know are good. I think that somebody that I think there's a spectrum of good. I doubt that's a philosophical term, but I'm a philosophical idiot, so that's what I'm going to call it.
No, that's fine. Like, but you see, because the whole point. So I can explain why it's not about reducing harm necessarily, although you can see it that way. But the whole point is that you, as a person, would always, in a situation where you're faced with the choice between creating more harm, if you want to discuss harm, towards humans or not, you would always choose the option to not. So in order to be logically consistent with your position,
not
you should also do that for animals.
Yeah, but no. I disagree with that.
Not deontologically. Yeah, not deontologically.
No, utility. Yeah, I do not hold that position deontologically. I hold that position utilitarianly because I think that if somebody is trying to end your life, you absolutely should end theirs first.
Yeah. So okay, but if we talk about the deontological position, you would never have the intent to harm somebody or to cause harm to somebody. And if and of course, if you had to do it, if you're in a situation where it's in self-defense, maybe you're in a deserted island and it's you versus them and you have to eat them, you would obviously choose to do it, right? Because you would be defending your life. And I guess it would be in some form of another justified. But when you're in a situation where you can make a choice and you are choosing to not to cause harm, but to support exploitation and of course inherently causing harm from that, wouldn't you say that you're acting more? So if you, sorry, let me put it this way: if you're in a situation where you could choose to exploit a person or not, or to cause harm to a person or not, whatever you want to see it, because I'm not very strict on these. Wouldn't you say that you would be acting logically inconsistent if you would be in the same situation for an animal, but you would be choosing differently?
That was, maybe it's me, but that came across really clunky. So I hold the position that I should never intend to harm humans for no reason, and I should extend that to animals.
Yeah. So and it's not just no reason, but like, because obviously when we harm animals or when we farm animals, we do it with a reason, but rather not a trivial reason, right? Not a reason that we can always just do something else.
Sure. So, the problem with this is that I can concede, or I concede logical inconsistency or hypocrisy on that, but you can't be vegan and not do the same thing. That's the problem I
So,
have with this.
so the thing is, I agree with you that again, it's not a perfect world, and as a vegan, you try to do your best. And I do find myself in situations where I ponder what is the moral thing, and how can I be logically consistent in these positions? And there are obviously gray areas, or not necessarily gray areas, but situations where it could be potentially difficult, or I would find it difficult to justify my choices. But I think like the whole idea of veganism isn't necessarily about going after these small extremities, but rather about acknowledging that in a day-to-day position, in your day-to-day life, you are still making choices, and the choices that you are making, you could be making them in a way that where you don't harm other sentient beings or exploit other sentient beings. If you are in like small
Yeah,
cases
that's like the Peter
situation,
Singer argument where everybody's evil because they choose. Like I could literally donate 1 penny to the United Way, and I don't. Therefore, I'm evil. I don't. If that's how it works, then I guess I am. But
I don't
yeah,
believe in evil, by the way. I'm not religious or anything. I don't believe there's such a
sure.
thing as evil or good. I just think there's like morally consistent or morally inconsistent. And I just like, I feel like, I mean, you're obviously a very intelligent person. And I love speaking to intelligent people. And I just feel like, as an intelligent person, you always have this extra moral duty because you could stand up for what is right. Because if you think about like 200 years ago, when we were enslaving humans, we were using the same justifications for what we do to animals today, and we were drawing the line not at a different species, but at a different race. So when we draw these arbitrary lines, we are essentially we are discriminating for something that doesn't we shouldn't really discriminate on.
Um. Yeah, and that, like I said, that can be fine. I was going to say something else, and then I got distracted because I was writing something down and I was listening to what you're saying. So now I don't remember what it was. But I want to ask you about two different things here,
Sure.
and then probably just move on.
Yeah, sure, I get it.
But like my thing is just it's always going to come back to, well, there's two things. If like the way you're describing things to me fits more along the lines of we should, like, if you try to be vegan but you fail, then that's but you don't live up to it or whatever, like we can call that fail or whatever, then that's okay. But I get the sense that vegans don't think it's okay. You either are vegan or you are morally wrong. And that just doesn't make any sense to me because, yes, I hear all the things about choosing not to cause harm, but a vegan has to kill trillions of animals in order for, well, a vegan doesn't, but a vegan world of 8 billion humans has to kill trillions of animals. And I think you just arbitrarily decide some animals don't deserve, they deserve to die as much as we need them to in order for us to live. I don't want to rehash all that. I want to try to do two things here. One,
can I just say before you go? I'm sorry for interrupting you there. Before you go on to move on to the next thing, I mean, you said on a vegan world, and I think that's a mistake because in a vegan world, the reality is the reason why we kill so many of these insects, because vegans care about insects also. The reason why we kill so many insects and why there are so many crop deaths is because the people who are in charge of those crops are not vegan. I would argue that a vegan who is growing plants will do their absolute best in trying to not harm any sentient beings. So in a vegan world, essentially,
you can't have that's anti-natalism. You can't have 8 billion humans in a world like that.
I mean, in what way can you not have that? Like, are you talking, because there are vertical farming, there's organic farming, there are methods of farming that don't cause so much harm to the I don't know, other sentient beings. But if you talk about land use and water use and all that, obviously a plant-based would monumentally be better for the whole world, right?
I just disagree. I don't have the ability to run the numbers or the statistics, but
yeah,
I firmly do not think you can have 8 billion humans without industrial agriculture. And industrial agriculture has to be, it's very high tech, but it's very, I don't know how to put it. I want to say
No, I
crude.
understand what
It's
you
not
mean.
crude, but like, you know, a guy with a garden in his backyard can shoo away the aphids and the caterpillars. And like, I take spiders from my house and put them outside, right?
Same.
Individually, you can do that. But in order to grow enough food for 8 billion human beings, you have to do it at an industrial level where you're gonna, like, a deer is gonna get hacked in half by your combine. The only alternative is to make everybody a subsistence farmer, and you can't have 8 billion human beings. That's not possible.
No, but so there is vertical farming for these situations where you would basically developing vertically, right? Where you wouldn't have the animals wouldn't be climbing vertically on some situations. But I understand what you mean about industrial agriculture will inherently mean some form of crop debts and some form of negligence, right, towards what it is that you're doing. But it would still be monumentally better than what it is now, first of all. And second, that still does not justify us like the harm that we cause within farming or our existence does not justify us causing more harm on top of it, right? Like even if you had it equally, where you would be animal agriculture would be equal to plant agriculture when it comes to 1 gram of protein using the same amount of land and all this, the same amount of crop debts. Even if you equalize it, it would still not make sense for you to choose animal agriculture, because that would still be the choice where you're intentionally paying for animals to be exploited and slaughtered. And if we ever, and there's also the argument that if we ever want to make the world better, we would anyway have to get rid of our intentional exploitation of animals so that we can tackle our incidental or accidental death that are caused within plant agriculture, right?
Sure. I could say a lot, but everything I would respond to I've
Yeah.
already said. And there were 2 other things I wanted to get to you
Yeah, go on.
on. Do you think that it's morally okay to kill invasive species?
Oh, no, I do not know.
Even though invasive species cause like huge amounts of harm to the native species?
Yeah, but like I think the most invasive species on this planet is by far the humans. I would not be morally okay with killing humans. So just because they cause and the whole humans without a doubt cause the most harm to all other species and environments on this planet. So I would just extend the same respect to all other animals. We definitely fucked
But-
up all the environment, but
So,
yeah.
like as an example, let's say there's an invasive species, like, I don't know, a snakehead or carp or kudzu, like whatever, I don't know. If we allow that invasive species to exist in an ecosystem, it could kill 90% of the animals there. So killing the
Then maybe we could relocate them.
invasive species, now it's basically a utilitarian argument, but you can sort of make the claim or the argument that, and kudzu is a bad example because that's a plant. Obviously, you don't give a shit about that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we can say, we can, like, if we could somehow know that if we kill 1 million invasive species of this one animal, it'll save, or it'll not exactly save, but it'll bring back, which in a way is saving 1 billion other animal species, which does follow the principle of reducing harm, I think, but you're still against it.
Yeah. So by the way, this isn't a vegan issue, right? This is just a interesting question to have. I would say it's more of a question about speciesism more than veganism itself, like discriminating based on species. For me personally, I don't believe in the ends justifying the means. So us killing some animals, even if the ends would be monumentally better, I don't agree with that. Like I wouldn't kill one human to save the whole humanity also. Or let me put it this way, maybe I would, but I wouldn't find my action moral, right? Like I'm not insane. I might commit immoral acts because I want the world to be in a certain way, but I wouldn't find those acts necessarily moral if I commit something that is clearly immoral, right? Like I would when
Sure.
we're doing this kind of things, we are essentially removing the individuality of all these individuals that belong to those species. And like if I were in that situation, I would try first relocating them, maybe castrating them. I don't know. It's still kind of iffy castrating them, of course. Even relocating them can be iffy. But I think there's things you can do before going, well, let's kill the whole species off or something. I don't know.
Okay. Fair enough. The other thing I wanted to ask you was I talked to a vegan like a week ago or so on YouTube, and we spent like 20 fucking minutes on this one question because he wouldn't give me a straight answer to it. And so like you know in the Arctic you can't grow food there, like if you live above the Arctic
Yeah.
Circle. But Inuit
Yeah.
people and Yupik people and whatever else, they live up there. The only thing they can do is, you know, harvest seals and eat that. You can't grow food. So do you
Yeah.
think it's morally wrong for people to live in the Arctic Circle? Or do they get a pass
That's
for some reason?
That's a good question, and I like how you phrased it. Is it morally wrong for people to live in that circle? Obviously, it will depend based on each individual, because I acknowledge that some individuals don't have the financial means to move from there, I would say. Um, but if you can move from there, if you can make the choice, like again, it's about the choice. If you have the freedom to choose, then I believe that you should choose the moral thing. Otherwise, yeah, living there might be the immoral thing. If living there means you might need to kill others, because if you live in an area where in order, like you choose to
Yeah, they
bring your
have to club
family to
seals. There's literally no other way to live.
yeah, but imagine being on an island somehow where you have to kill other humans to survive, and you choose to live there. Then I mean, you could say that you're no longer in a situation where you're I don't know, survival situation. You're intentionally in that. You're putting yourself in that situation to do it. But even in the Arctic, if I'm not mistaken, nowadays they have supermarkets almost everywhere. And while it could potentially be more difficult to be vegan, I wouldn't say necessarily it's impossible to be vegan.
Well, I mean, like there are people that live, you know, traditionally indigenous people, and I don't know to what extent they have access to the grocery store or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
I asked that question to him because he implied at the beginning that it was okay, and I was like, wait, but if you take this really strong stance, then shouldn't it be morally wrong for them to live there if they have the choice to leave? And
yeah.
he just kind of like eventually he said that would be. Now, your argument is they don't really have much of a choice. So it's not like they can just die or anything like that. So that's fine. Like I wasn't trying to gotcha on it. I was just really looking for I want to hear the best arguments to what I think are good rebuttals or like what do they call edge cases, you know? So
No, I
those
appreciate these edge cases, by the way. I love challenging these things. And if you like, almost every week, I find an edge case myself that I need to challenge because I mean, that's the thing about existence. We will be killing somebody. We know that. But I think, you know, just to simplify the whole message is if you have the choice to not do it, I would say you should choose not to do it. It's as simple as that. We don't have to go into complicated things and making numbers on one side or the other. You can just say, well, my intent, knowing that I'm intentionally causing harm or intentionally exploit, because it's about exploitation, not harm, by the way, but intentionally exploiting animals for something that I can definitely choose otherwise, then how can I ever morally justify doing that? So
right.
yeah, there are edge cases, as you said, but you know, those are interesting to discuss and look. But yeah, I don't know. I would say even in situations like if I go on a deserted island and I could only eat animals to survive. Well, sorry, not if I could go, but if I end up on a deserted island and I can only survive by eating animals, I would still call myself vegan if I do eat some animals, because I am still acting within my principle where I reject it as much as I possibly and practically can. But I wouldn't. Nobody's advocating for people to die off or for anything like that, right? It's about making the right choices when you have the available choices, and very importantly, being intellectually honest with yourself that you actually have those choices, because people will always say, yeah, but it's difficult to go to the store, or come up with reasons or stuff like that, right?
Yep. Okay. I think we'll have to leave it there.
Yeah, I appreciate the talk, man. It's a nice talk. And I love your channel, by the way. I found you on YouTube, and I've been watching your conversation. I especially love when you call people it. I start laughing when you do that. It's always so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I only do that to like the flat earthers, but yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming
I guess
up.
I heard a lot of flat earthers. Cheers, man. Bye.
Always a good time to edge with a viewer.
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. Just looking at edge cases.
I think I can prove the existence of God. I'll give you my argument and let me know if it's logical or not. So I'm a human. I have a consciousness. I can think of ideas. I can conceptualize things, and I can come up with the idea of God in my mind, and therefore God exists in my mind.
In your mind, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? So if that's the case, then I can imagine the God defeating penguin exists, which means the God in your mind doesn't exist.
God defeating what?
Penguin.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
I can imagine in my mind the God defeating penguin existing. So that means that anybody that imagines God, they actually don't, because the God defeating penguin that I imagined makes their God not exist.
Well, they exist in separate universes. The closed universe of your mind is different than the closed universe of my mind, correct?
I don't think so. I think you and I live in the universe.
We live in the same material universe, but the reality as it is constructed in your mind is separate than the reality that is constructed within my mind, correct?
Yeah, but we're still sharing the same reality, because that big circle is the universe, and then the two little circles are your mind and my mind. So we occupy the same universe.
Right, and those two tiny circles are closed off from one another. They don't share any space.
No, they do. They share the universe.
Right.
They're inside the same big circle.
Right, but your little circle is not inside of my circle.
One circle, one big circle.
Right, there's three circles, and the one of the two smaller circles is not inside the other smaller circle.
They're part of the same set, though.
They're part of the same larger circle, but the two smaller circles are not within one another. They're within the bigger circle together.
They share an ultimate reality. And so since in that ultimate reality, a God-defeating penguin exists, that means that God cannot exist in that reality. Your mind is just a subset of that broader reality. And so it doesn't matter.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome, dude. I never thought he was being serious, but... But I don't know, I guess. Penguins for the W. You're right, Mr. G. Mike, what's up?
Hey man, what's up? So I kind of want to just continue on with that talk you were talking about the universe. It's kind of tripping me out. So have you heard of this theory about our galaxy is in the middle of a giant void? I'm sure you have.
Have I heard the argument that our galaxy is in the middle of a giant void?
Yeah.
There are voids in the universe, but ours isn't in one. So I don't know what you mean.
So there's this new study that's come out that astronomers are looking at, that we might be in the middle of a 2 billion light year wide void of space. And so they think that, and I'm probably butchering this, but it may have implications on the, what's it called? The Hubble, the Hubble tension, something of that sort. Basically, it may affect how we look at the Big Bang. So if we're in a void and we're looking out, the expansion of the universe may seem faster than it actually is because we're in that void. I don't know if that's true, but it's a weird theory,
I
and
don't know
I don't
anything
know how you
about
can test
this.
that.
I mean, I know about voids. The only void I'd ever heard of by name is it's called the Boots Void, and it's freaking huge. It is. How big is it? It's not literally empty. It's 330 million light years across, which is huge, but as a fraction of the actual observed universe, it's pretty small. Where are we? We're in the aren't we in the Virgos? Yeah, no, where we are here, I can share this. I have
I don't know.
technology. So here's
I don't know
let
if
me
I can minimize mine.
I got it pulled up. Can you see this?
Oh, yeah, I can. I see it.
So like we're right. This is the observable universe, so we're in the middle, obviously. But yeah, I mean this Virgo supercluster. I mean it's literally a supercluster. So and then the Boots Void it's over here. So I don't know. I mean the thing about us being in a void, I just like that goes against everything I've ever heard of.
Yeah,
But
I just saw the
and
article
then
about this.
yeah, and then the thing you said about, well, if we're in a void, then that means the distant galaxies are going to look like they're expanding faster than they really are. I don't know why that would be, but I don't know what the science behind that is. I'm not the person to ask that, I guess. I've just never heard of it. So, yeah, I don't really have anything on that. I can't push back on it or agree with you or anything.
No, I was just curious if you had heard of that because earlier the guy was, discussing the Big Bang and how, if you, look back, it condenses to a single point, and that may be true of like if our so like not necessarily void meaning like empty space, but like compared to the rest of the universe, we are pretty empty compared to more denser portions of the universe, kind of like a Swiss cheese model. And what if that single point that we think it shrinks down to is actually not the universe, but it's our void section, and we can't see further than the voided section we're in because we haven't been able to see that far back. Cosmic radiation can only see so far back or whatever. I don't know. It's just a weird thing to think about. I just saw the article and I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if you had heard about that. If you had any opinions on that.
No, I can't really give you any useful anything.
Gotcha. So like the other thing, just a quick question. So I wanted to buy your book, but I wanted to ask before I did so, what's the best place to buy it to give you the most positive impact? Do you get higher numbers on returns if it's bought somewhere versus somewhere else?
Yeah. Which book are you looking at?
So I wanted to get both. I wanted to get your facts that aren't true, and then the other one, the
best place you could is I actually still have a few signed copies of my more recent book, Rational Answers to Stupid Questions, or Facts That Aren't True.
Yeah.
I do still have some signed copies of those. You'd get that from my Shopify store. There's a link to it on my profile. I don't have any more hard copies of my first book. The second best way you could do it, and you could get both books, is to go to BookBaby. And again, I have a link tree on my profile, or all my YouTube videos. There's a link to it because BookBaby is who prints my book, so I get like a 50% royalty from them. Amazon takes another 25%, so I make like $4 for every time I sell a book on Amazon. So it's not great. I mean, Amazon, like the potential for it to explode is better there because so many more eyeballs. I just openly don't I don't advertise it on Amazon, basically, or I don't advocate for it, I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah, cool. All right, yeah, I'm gonna pick those up off your Shopify then, because I've been following your channel for like a year now. It's fucking hilarious. I remember one time I was watching one, and the guy's argument was God exists because it's in the, it's written in the Bible, and he just wouldn't let it go. And you're like, okay, well, I have a book right here, and it says that pee is stored in the balls, so
Yeah.
it must be true.
I've done
Shit
that.
was so
I've done that a
fucking funny. I
couple
was dying
times.
laughing.
Yeah, those.
Then they just can't wrap their head around how stupid that is.
Yep. Pee is stored in the balls. Thus saith the book.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, man. That's all I had. Thanks, dude.
You're welcome.
All right, later.
Actually, funny enough, on my second YouTube channel, Planet Peterson Clips, tomorrow I will be uploading clips from a flat earther where I used the pee is stored in the balls argument, and that might be who he was thinking of. I'm not sure, but yeah, he couldn't figure it out. What's up, Waju?
So recently, an exorcist came to our school to talk about his job, and I was pretty surprised about his job because he was more a liberal Christian who viewed this type of exorcism as not useful, because if a person comes to you who thinks that he's possessed by a demon, you shouldn't say to him that he's literally possessed by a demon, because that makes the problem worse. But you should help him, guide him through this process with a therapist and so on. So I was pretty surprised because of that, because of this view. So he doesn't believe this part of the Bible, because Jesus himself was convinced that demons possess people and he cleansed people of demons. So I asked him how come he believes, and he doesn't believe this thing, but he believes in the other things. And he said that it's like that. It's when the people wrote this down, it was like from their perspective, and he made the argument that when you are making your diary, writing a diary, even if it's fantastical or things you write down aren't not that true, it doesn't make it false, but it's like a different perspective. And he also said that there's not really proof that there's no God, but on the other hand, there's also no proof that there is a God. So that's what I got from that, and I wanted to hear your thoughts because of a liberal Christian who believes on parts of the Bible, but also believes in the grand scheme of things. I don't know if it was much of a dump. I was just waiting over an hour and wanted to lay out the things I wanted to say.
I mean, I don't even know what I'm supposed to respond to. So what do I think about the idea that some of the stories of the Bible are just people writing down? I have no idea what I'm supposed to respond to.
Yeah, so I guess I'll point it down. Should people take what's written in the Bible as it's said, or interpret it? Because his point is that real Christians don't really take it.
You have to interpret it no matter what, because taking it literally is an interpretation. The way somebody does that is always, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say it's always going to be arbitrary, because there are literary tools and historical tools that we use to try and be objective, and so I wouldn't call that arbitrary. But I mean, I had a long conversation, I think it was yesterday, with a guy where it was yesterday, where I talked to this guy, and, you know, he said, yeah, I think the book of Job is epic poetry, and I don't think Islam is true. And I was like, I mean, okay, but there's nothing in the book of Job or in the Quran that is more unbelievable than Jesus walking on water. All of those stories are equally stupid to me. But one of the points he made, which is a fair point, is, well, I think you can you can argue that it's just very plain and obvious that Job is epic poetry, but the Gospels are narratives. And it's like, I mean, fair enough, but I mean, if I put on my skeptical cap, I'm going to disbelieve every single miraculous claim, no matter what. And I don't have to point to whether or not somebody really meant it when they wrote it down, or if they're trying to, write something like the Book of Job or Beowulf, which are both just cases of, what the word be like, praising yourself or whatever. Emasculating yourself, is that the word? No, that's absolutely not at all the correct term, but whatever. So that's what I think.
So I don't know if I already asked you this. I have the feeling that you've already answered this, but like I asked the exorcist this, how come he believes in this and not in that? Isn't that hypocritical? And funny enough, the exorcist didn't answer me for some reason, and another student in my class answered it for me and said that it wasn't hypocritical at all. So yeah, I don't know what to say. Like it's, for me, it's fantastical. It's like it's like a story. It's nothing that's factual. So how come you as a Christian can view something as not real, but the other as that really happened and impacts my life and how I view things?
I didn't really hear a question in there. I'm really confused.
Is it hypocritical to view things in the Bible as truth and others as completely false, but still call yourself a Christian?
Oh, is that hypocritical? I mean, no. I mean, you kind of have to take that stance. I wouldn't really call it hypocritical. I wouldn't call it intellectually honest, but I wouldn't call it hypocritical.
But if you're a Christian, you hold the Bible as the center point of your belief. So shouldn't everything that's in the Bible be your truth?
Oh, that's what you meant. I thought you meant other religions.
No.
No, I don't think you have to do that. I don't think you have to be a biblical literalist all the way through, because we know that people write and speak in metaphors, like Jesus does it. I can't really, like he says, I don't remember how it goes, but some people are criticizing somebody who's either a Gentile or maybe a Pharisee or something. I don't know. And Jesus says, why do you pick out the thorn in their eye and ignore the log in yours? Okay, did Jesus think that people had actual logs in their eyeballs? Obviously not.
I don't mean this sort of things. Like, of course, a log isn't gonna fit in your eyeball, but like statements like that God created the universe in 7 days, or other big statements that would change and impact your worldview. That's what I mean. Because even those things, some wouldn't consider as facts, but other things.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I watched this debate with a dude who's a Christian, but thinks the universe is billions of years old and thinks that evolution is true. And the other person was a total biblical literalist, basically through and through, except for some small parts, right? And while I think the theistic evolutionist and the old world creationist is more rational, they really did get kind of cornered in a lot of places during that discussion that I don't see how you walk away from it except for kind of betraying your own faith, or because, like, for example, when they're talking about the creation of the universe, like Genesis 1, the the guy that thinks it isn't literal gives the case for why he thinks it's not. Then the young earth creationist is like, wait, but don't you think that God did create the universe? And they go, yeah. I'm like, do you think that God used the laws of physics to create the universe? No. It's like, okay, well then there's absolutely nothing. There's no real reason for you to suspend your belief that this isn't the literal account of what happened. And they just used a different like literary interpretation of the text, but they're actually operating from the standpoint of, no, the science tells us that what the Bible is saying can't literally be true. And it's like, well, but that's not what, like, if you're gonna say that, then you can't be a Christian in a weird sort of sense, because science says a resurrection can't happen. And why you're going to, like, you're really only, you can use the literary tools or whatever, that's fine, but you can't do that with the resurrection narrative, because you can't be a Christian if you don't believe that. But you're allowed to do it for this other thing. Why? Because. And so for me, it's just kind of like, thanks for playing. Thanks for being honest, but you're still wrong. And then I burped.
So what I took away from that is Jesus is in every Christian form. I don't know what's it called in English. Jesus Christ is in the middle of everything. So I think if you don't believe stuff of Jesus Christ, then you're excluded of being a Christian, but everything else concerning the Bible could be ignored in some sense.
I mean, I wouldn't say everything else, but I mean, it's very hard to boil it down to what do you have to accept at a minimum to be a Christian. I would say the existence and resurrection of Jesus, absolutely. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, there have been Christians that have rejected the doctrine of the Trinity. There aren't really very many of those alive today. So that's about it.
I've been thinking about this, and I wanted some type of clarification. Is what I took away from the Bible is that humans have been created, if I'm not mistaken, by dirt, by God, and Eve was created from a rib that Adam pulled out of his body.
That
And
sounds pretty believable.
doesn't this go against the evolution from which we can take away that humans evolved from? I think animals that
it
lived in
absolutely
water
does.
that-
And I've never talked to a theistic evolutionist on what they specifically believe about Adam and Eve. I've heard them talk about it, and I've heard some of them say that, for example, humans existed and Adam and Eve were just the first two humans that God formed a relationship with. And it's like, okay, but the book, it really doesn't say that. It says he was created out of the dirt. So, like, why say something that isn't true? Because that one, I don't know where the hell you go with a metaphorical. Like, it says she was made out of his rib. You know, there's no metaphor in there. There's no. Yes, there was an Adam and an Eve and a garden, and God did talk to them, but it was different. Like, when it really specifically says he made her out of a rib, I don't know where you go from that. So you'd have to ask them, because I don't know.
But that's where I drive against a brick wall in some sense, because how can you believe and teach in biology about evolution, still have religion?
I don't know.
And the religion teacher lectures you about Adam and Eve and their creation, which goes against every principle that we have learned from science.
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I got a bunch of other guests that are waiting. I'm gonna have to go to some of them.
All right. Thanks for the clarifications and discussion.
You're what? Oh shit! I forgot. When you do it on the phone and you click X, you have to click another button first before they actually disconnect. And I keep forgetting that it's instant on the desktop. Anyways. Hello,
Hello.
Cat.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I'm a great fan of yours. I watch a lot of your stuff, and I wanted to ask you one question because I saw your video against Darth Dawkins. He's a complete jerk, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Dude, I talked to him personally, and he shut me down immediately. He was like, "Are you atheist, or do you accept Christianity?" And I was like, "Well, it's not just that simple."
Yeah, according to him, it doesn't
agnostic.
work that way. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very definitive.
Yeah,
Um,
he's an unbearable grumpy cunt, and Jesus would hate him. If he ever comes up here, I'll talk to him. If he ever comes up here, that might be that'll be one of the questions I want to ask him. Do you think Jesus would like you? Because I can't imagine I can't imagine the rationality for him saying yes. I just cannot.
I agree completely. But I wanted to ask you just one question real quick. What would you say is like your favorite argument to go to against the creationist or against the Christian in general?
That's a good question. I mean, it's the approach is so different depending on what kind of Christian they are. If they're a creationist, then I just use science to demonstrate that their interpretation of what their book says is just so obviously wrong. But you could take that to just say that the book itself is wrong. If they're an old earth creationist, a theistic evolutionist, I typically don't even debate them. If I did get into a debate about theism or atheism, which has the better evidence. I didn't pick the title, that's what it was. And I prepared for that debate. It was a 2v2. The guy I did it with, we basically just pretended, we assumed that they would be old earth creationists. So like we wouldn't so then we just had to like basically argue like logically general theism versus atheism. We tried not to make it super specific about Christianity, but they were Christians, and that is kind of what we ended up talking about a lot. But I guess with that, I would just use things like the problem of evil. I don't see how you can possibly have I don't see how you can possibly have an omnibenevolent God in this universe that we live in. We also took a look at how there are lots of angles to this, like the fact that whatever religion you happen to hold is going to be geographically predictable. That makes perfect sense if all the religions are made up, because like you have the possibility either they're all false, they're somehow all true, or one of them somehow is true. So like if we go on that and then we take a look at the world and what does this world look like, which of those ideas looks best, and the geographic distribution of religions, if you're, I don't want to say a bigot, but I don't know what else to say. If you're just gonna do confirmation bias or whatever and say, yeah, mine is the true one, even though yours fits the exact geographic mapping that all religions do. You believe in whatever your neighbors believe in, basically, then I think that bodes best for that they're all made up. And in order to say yours is the only true one, despite the fact that it fits that pattern, I don't know where you go from that. Sometimes though, even if they're a Christian who, accepts like all these science things that are going up here, I would say, because a lot of people that come up here, I don't know what they actually believe in, but some people come up here a little bit hostile and like, oh, so you disproved God, huh? You know that you can't scientifically disprove God, and God's outside of space and time, so you can't prove or disprove God. Blah, blah, blah. I go, well, I kind of agree with you, but the Christian God definitely can't exist. Woo, what do you mean? Read Genesis 18. It says that God doesn't know what's happening in Sodom and Gomorrah, and he has to go see for himself. And if God is omniscient, then that means that the Christian God can't be God. It doesn't exist. It's a married bachelor. So
That's a great point, actually. I've never really thought to bring that up.
yeah, and God also, I mean, if you read the Old Testament, God acknowledges that other gods exist. God loses a battle to another god. God doesn't know what's happening in Sodom and Gomorrah. There are multiple instances of God changing his mind. There's arguably some instances of God lying. And so the Christian God is a contradiction. So I have no problem saying the Christian God doesn't exist.
I agree with the problem of evil too. I often like the first thing that I always resort to is animal suffering, and either they don't understand it philosophically, or they say it's okay because they're gonna go to heaven, and like it's totally fucked up either way. So
They think all dogs go to heaven.
well, like oftentimes whenever I bring it up, it's like well, their suffering is worthwhile because they go to heaven, and then it's like, well, first of all, I don't even know if animals go to heaven at all, and
Yeah,
and
I don't
then
know. That doesn't make any sense.
yeah, that's often what like what any of my Christian friends will say, but
Do
yeah,
you know
it's
do you know who Big John Steele is?
no, I don't.
Oh, he's pretty popular on TikTok. He's a Catholic apologist or whatever, but he and I had a discussion, and it was basically about, problem of evil stuff. That was the main thing. And an angle I took with it was I didn't say anything about, I kind of front loaded the conversation with this. I was like, some people use natural disasters and the fact that humans do terrible things to each other as examples of the problem of evil. Now I think it's goofy to say that God doesn't cause the natural disaster, because even if you believe a tsunami is created by an earthquake, God knew that it would happen, and God intentionally designed a world where it would. So he is ultimately responsible. But I can just cede to you that the natural disaster wasn't done by God. And I can cede to you that humans being evil to each other, we don't even need to go there for problem of evil, because God very clearly does evil things. And it's like, what do you mean? And so normally people, like, you can point to Noah's flood. That's just such an obvious example. But the theist will say, well, but all those people were evil, wicked sinners, blah, blah, which is just stupid bullshit. But the example I use, which is a weird example, but I think it's might be the best one, is circumcision. God demanded that the Israelites circumcise their babies, knowing goddamn well that huge numbers of them would die from it because of infections. It still happens today. Hundreds of kids die every year, despite the unprecedented gains we've made in medical technology. So it would have been vastly greater back then. And God made them do it. So God is directly responsible and commanded this utterly pointless suffering. And so we spent a long time on that. And his basic argument was a little bit like your all dogs go to heaven thing. He just kind of said, you have to take the Bible in totality, and Jesus is going to save people in the end. So they will have understood that their suffering was worth it, or so. And I was like, what? And it didn't really make any sense. The full debate's on my YouTube channel. It's called Problem of Evil with Big John Steele, I think.
I'll go watch that for sure.
Problem of Evil with Big John Steele. Yeah. And it's a picture of him and Mermaid Man screaming, "Evil!" That's the thumbnail. But anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with every single point. And just one more question. I got to go soon, but would you say that evolution can disprove Christianity?
I think you could. I actually had this conversation earlier in the stream. So I think you could use it as a buttress to the problem of evil in an extremely effective way. So go watch the debate that Phil Halper and Alex O'Connor had with the Nechtleys on Modern Day Debate, because they point to if you accept evolution, and death and suffering is a necessary component because it shapes the way animals become and what gets selected for survival and all that, which means God deliberately designed a world with all of this just utterly pointless suffering, or God desires the suffering to happen because God created the world with evolution, and that's just an unfortunate reality of evolution. So, like, I think kind of, yeah, but not really from the standpoint of evolution. I think it buttresses the problem of evil very well.
I think I can understand that. I kind of had it in the back of my head that would kind of be your answer. That, like, not directly, but it could be used as a supporting argument from a result of it, you know. But
yeah.
Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I'm gonna join your stream another time if you are streaming again soon. And yeah, keep up the good work.
I will do my best.
Hell yeah.
Sewer slide. That's my play on words that I use. I've never heard anyone else use that. Hello?
Oh, holy shit. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't think I was gonna get up. Nice to talk to you, dude. I've watched some of your stuff before. I've watched a lot of your stuff, actually, and I know that you like don't believe in like an afterlife or anything like that. But I was just wondering, like, hypothetically, if you had to pick one, what do you think the most like logical would be? Like, after we die, what do you think might happen?
Are you asking me, are you doing the equivalent of saying, look, if there is a religion that is true, which one do you think is most likely to be true? But for the afterlife?
No.
Or are you
Like,
just asking me what I literally think happens
yeah.
after you die?
kind of like what do you think happens to our consciousness after we die?
Oh, I think it just ceases very, very unceremoniously. It just,
If you had to pick one, what would you pick?
pick a what?
Like, I don't know, afterlife, or like if you had to choose what would happen to your consciousness, what would you pick?
Oh, well, that's interesting. Would I want my consciousness to keep going? I mean, I would love to sit around and watch the rest of the universe unfold. I don't know. The alternative is nothing, which
I mean, I would
it's
love to
not
be a
it's not
spook
like you
ghost.
can it's not like you can miss nothing. It just that's like being mad that you missed out on what happened before you were born. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it would be cool to be able to sit around and just watch the rest of everything happen. I can't really imagine what would necessarily be like wrong with that.
I mean, I think it would be pretty cool just to be able
And
to take like a third party perspective on everyone else's life without them knowing you're there. You know?
Yeah, the cool part about that is oh man, it would give creeps. That would be heaven for creeps. Even if heaven doesn't exist but your consciousness somehow keeps existing, then but what's kind of funny is when people pose like the afterlife to me, I like to go to this quote from Futurama where they're talking about that, and Bender says, "If I knew I'd have to live a whole nother life, I'd just kill myself right now." And I was like, damn, that's kind of. But when people talk about heaven, and it's like, there's absolutely no logical, rational justification for choosing to live here on Earth and not going to heaven as fast as you possibly can. It actually doesn't make any sense. But and so I contrast that, because people say, like, if you don't believe in the afterlife, then life is meaningless. It's like, no, au contraire, mademoiselle. If life is the only thing you have, it's absolutely the most valuable thing. And then I go to the Bender quote for the alternative, which I do think logically holds. But yeah, if you're conscious, if you can just like float around as a consciousness, then there's no point in hurrying up and dying. So
Yeah, no, I know exactly where you're coming from, but I also think it would be kind of cool if the whole cyclic existence were like a thing and like karma did come into play, just so you could like stick it to these fucking Bible thumpers that are like, well, if you're not a good person and you don't follow the Bible, you're gonna go to hell. And it's like, but I'm a good fucking person. So if I had to pick anything, I would probably pick like that, uh, like the wheel of life in some extent, because I'm like kind of like how you are, like an agnostic atheist, you know. I just believe being a good person is probably like the best way to carry yourself, because like some people that claim they're good people are not good people, and like I I don't want them to like quote go to hell or anything like that, but I feel like some form of after punishment would be necessary. Like, okay, now you're a bug. You know what I mean?
I was a little distracted because did you say now you're a bug?
Yeah. Like I said, if I had to like pick something, like the
Oh, just
whole moral
reincarnate
process.
into a different.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, the odds
I
of
feel like that would be
the odds of
justified
dying
and
a
shit.
death worse than anything you've ever seen in a Final Destination movie as an animal is almost guaranteed. So I don't actually like the prospect of any of that.
Yeah, but I feel like there should be not like punishment, but like if if you're a shitty person, like, and you live a great life, but you're still a shitty person, um, that like after you die, like your next life should be kind of shitty, like the whole karma thing, or at
All
least
right.
samsara. Like you come back as like a pointless thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What's his name? That very unfunny comedian who was really popular for 2 years. He does TikTok live streams now, actually. Oh, I see random celebrities on TikTok. Him and Chumlee does these like Pokemon card unboxing things on TikTok. It's really random. What the hell is his name? It was Dave something, wasn't it? Back in like 2008, 2009. Dane Cook. Yes, that's the one. But he has this joke that's kind of funny. He imagines an atheist reincarnation is true, and an atheist dies, and he gets reincarnated as a tree, and somebody chops him down and prints the Bible on him. I was like, yeah, that's funny.
And he probably yelled a bunch while he was saying it. That's why it was funny.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. That was his whole
I
shtick.
love how all I said was that one comedian who isn't funny, and everybody guessed Dane Cook.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought he was pretty funny back in the day, but I was also a child, so
Yeah, I mean that's probably it. I don't know. There's this weird like I always have this weird idea. I think back on things I thought were really funny when I was younger. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm like, I'm not talking about cartoon shows, except for, like South Park or whatever. But that's actually probably the best example. I just think to myself, was South Park originally marketed? Like, were they trying to be funny to really young people? And I just still think it's funny now that I'm older. Or did people who were 40 think the original South Park was actually really hilarious? Because it is really stupid. Like the earlier, like I'll fully admit that the later seasons are more like, they're more nuanced in their humor, and the earlier ones, it's just like it's a lot of it's just dumb humor. And there's a lot of shows where I think about that. I'm like, was the whole point was like for kids right away, and then you just like keep a loyal audience as they get older? I don't know. It's just a random weird thought, but
I saw a lot of interviews with them, with the creators, and it's pretty much just like whatever the fuck they thought was funny at first. They started doing it like
yeah.
and then it eventually turned into like whatever hot take and who can they pick.
I'm sorry to do this, but I'm getting a phone call from my dad, and he tried to call me earlier, so I gotta go.
Oh hell yeah!
Because I assume
I'll
it's
see you, man.
probably
Thanks
important.
for talking to me.
Hello? Yeah, what's up?